All right, so we're going to talk about energy. So this is so let's recap on a couple different definitions. Okay, so how organisms gain energy. Okay, because they can neither create nor destroy, so they actually can just transfer it. So there's two different ways. There's autotrophic. That means that these so all of our energy starts from the sun. Okay, so all of the energy that every organism, doesn't matter if you're an autotroph or a heterotroph, all of your energy starts from the sun. Okay, so we have solar energy. Okay, and there's three different wavelengths of energy that we can actually have. So there's visible light, basically what we actually see. Ultraviolet. These are a little bit shorter than visible light, and it can actually penetrate through living tissues. And there's infrared or heat, okay, which is a much longer wavelength. So pigments. Okay, so we talked about our different wavelengths. Okay, so basically different wavelengths equals different colors. So when we mix them all together, that's what white light is. Okay, or what we actually see. So let's look at absorbed. All right, so let's talk about the seasons. Okay, so we live in a temperate deciduous forest. Okay, so basically what our forest does every single autumn is our leaves fall. Okay, does the tree die or does it go through dormancy? So it goes through dormancy, or basically it goes to sleep or hibernation. Okay, so as the seasons change, we get less and less light, right? Okay, compared to our summer, to our fall, and eventually to our winter. Okay, so when the chlorophyll breaks down in the fall, that's where that yellow, orange, brown, red, all of those pigments are actually being shown through. Okay, originally they would be absorbed, but in this case, they're actually being broken down by the chlorophyll when the chlorophyll breaks down, and this is what's being shown through. So photosynthesis, okay? What exactly is it? Basically, it's a process or equation that we use, or that the plants use, in order to automatically, right, because they're autotrophs, to create their own food. Okay, so where photosynthesis or this whole process occurs is in the leaves. Okay, so if you look at this picture, you will see each individual cell wall. Okay, these rectangles, and then inside the rectangle, not only is it green, but you also see green circles. Those green circles are actually chloroplasts. So remember from our last unit we talked about cells. Remember, chloroplasts is where the only are found in plants, because this is the process, or where photosynthesis takes place. So inside each of these chloroplasts, this is that bill. So let's look at the chloroplast. It contains chlorophyll, only found in plants. Has a couple different parts. The chloroplast itself is the whole entire structure. All right, and this is what the actual picture looks like. So if we see, we have double membrane. Okay, so we have an outer, which is very smooth, and we have an inner. Okay, it's a double membrane. So again, we automatically know, since it is a membrane. So let's look at the waste product. So let's talk about the light reaction. Now, the second part is called the light independent, okay, or you might hear it as a Calvin cycle. Basically, this does not need light, okay, and what happens is in order to get the CO2 into the cells, okay, or into the plant itself, in order to go through photosynthesis, it goes through tiny little pores, okay, kind of. So if we look here, this is what I was talking about, okay, so here's your stroma, okay, so, or excuse me, your stomata. Your stomata lets O2 out and CO2 in. Okay, so again, this is basically how the plant actually exchanges gas. And it does have a protective cuticle. Okay, so it's very similar to your cuticle. And the leaves also have veins. Okay, we're not talking about exchanging blood, okay, because plants don't have blood, but they do have a vascular system just like us, but instead of exchanging blood, they're exchanging water and or nutrients. Now, major problem with plants, okay, is their dehydration rate. Okay, so this is water actually being lost. So our plants had to adapt to it. Okay, so our first adaptation was C4 plants. Basically, now the can plants only open their pores at night when it's much cooler. Okay, so the CO2 is absorbed. Now, let's talk about our products. Okay, our end product is glucose, right? Anything that ends in OSE, what does that mean? Well, it means that it's a carbohydrate, right? Okay, so this is the glucose is what actually creates. Now go ahead and take a minute to watch this video. All right, so again, endosymbiosis. Okay, so we talked about endo. Okay, endo means inside, symbiosis means a relationship. Now, we talked about this theory when we talked about cells. Okay, so remember, these ones are the ones that actually we thought that prokaryotic cells, okay, or eukaryotic cells actually evolved from prokaryotic cells. So we now know, okay, or we theorize, I should say, that the origin of chloroplasts is actually to be very similar to the origin of mitochondria. Okay, so basically, like mitochondria, chloroplasts has their own DNA. Okay. Now, in addition to chloroplasts, okay, we know that plant cells also have mitochondria. Okay, mitochondria actually produce or perform cell respiration. Okay, so basically, the reactants, water, sunlight, and CO2 that the chloroplast needs, as well as the two products, oxygen and glucose, the mitochondria uses the chloroplast products as its reactants and its. Now I want to do a checkpoint. Okay, so tell me, what are the reactants and what are the products of photosynthesis? Okay, so think about what plants need versus what do they expel out. So plants need water, actually 6 H2O plus 6 CO2 plus the sun gives it or yields C6H12O6. What is that? That's 1 molecule of glucose plus 6 molecules of O2. Now, how can we measure the rate of photosynthesis? By how much what is being created? Oxygen. Very good. Okay, and or glucose. What is the wavelength of light related to the rate of photosynthesis? So again, depending on the length, right? If it is short, or if it is shorter or longer, or it is using chlorophyll A versus chlorophyll B, can actually depend. Okay, so again, that's blue, violet, and reds, okay, being used, can actually show how efficient or how well photosynthesis actually occurs. So a radish is grown behind using light of different colors. Explain this chart. Which light performed the best? Well, clear, obviously, because it has both chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and carotenoids. Now I would say probably yellow went next, red, blue, and then ultimately green. Okay, why is green the lowest? Because it's being reflected, not absorbed. Okay, so things you definitely need to know. Definitely know that equation, backwards, frontwards, inside, outwards. The structure of the chloroplast, make sure you know how to sketch it. And then the two reactants, the light and the dark, or light independent and light dependent. Now let's talk about cell respiration. Now where does this occur, or which organisms does it occur with? Now again, we talked about all life, doesn't matter what you are. Okay, if you are considered alive, remember the 7 characteristics you have to. So, where do we get our energy? Well, we get our energy, step 1, from our producers, okay, such as green plants or algae, okay? So this is like all of our cellulose, right? Okay, starch, sugar, animal meat. Now, consumers. Are we a consumer or are we a producer? We are a consumer, okay, because we have to be able to eat other things. So think about a food web, okay? So in this food web, which organisms So again, what are we trying to gain out of our eating our food? Energy, ATP. Respiration. So let's talk about a mitochondria. We can find this in both eukaryotic cells, okay, plants and animals. Now our whole entire structure is called a mitochondria. We have an outer membrane, we have an inner membrane, and we have a matrix. Now, let's look at this whole structure. Again, the whole structure is a mitochondria. So this is our chemical equation. C6H12O6 plus 6O2 gives you 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus 36 ATP. Again, what is ATP? That is the amount of energy. Okay, what is C6H12O6? That is 1 glucose molecule. Okay, do you notice a trend? Do you notice anything that's similar? or anything that's different from our equation of photosynthesis? Yes, that's exactly right. It's opposite. Okay, so our products are their reactants. Our reactants are their products. Great job. Alright, so ATP, what exactly is ATP? ATP is adenine triphosphate. Okay, basically it's the currency or energy currency. Okay, so we have 3 phosphate groups. We have 1 ribose. Ribose is a sugar because again it ends in OSE. And we have adenine. Adenine is our what? Because it's to it. Now, respiration is aerobic. Okay, so again, aerobic, you need oxygen. Okay, but our process actually is anaerobic at first. Okay, so anaerobic or fermentation, this means that it does not need oxygen. So, the 3 steps of cellular respiration is glycolysis, Krebs cycle. You might also hear it as the citric acid cycle or the electrotransport chain. Now, glycolysis. Okay, glycolysis produces ATP very quickly. Okay, there's only actually 2 ATP that is produced from this process. Now, glycolysis is anaerobic, which means it does not need oxygen, and it's also found in the cytoplasm. Okay, so this actually is referred to as anaerobic fermentation. Now let's talk about fermentation. Okay, so there's 2 byproducts of fermentation. There's lactic acid, and there's alcoholic. Okay, so think about it. Our prokaryotic bacteria uses alcoholic fermentation. Okay, so you might have seen this when producing alcoholic beverages or even causing bread, okay, like pasta or actual loaves of bread to rise, okay, or your cakes. Now, lactic acid, if you've ever experienced a muscle cramp, this is actually due to an anaerobic. So again, are you using that oxygen or are you breathing correctly in order to get that oxygen in and expel that CO2 correctly if you're experiencing muscle cramps or fermentation? Nope, you are not. That's why you are causing lactic acid buildup. Okay, so you're going through an anaerobic. So that means you better start breathing correctly in your nose, out your mouth. Okay, if you're trying to run a mile. Now, fermentation. We think about just either bread and or producing alcoholic beverages like wine or beer. Well, actually, a lot of your food products we use. Okay, think about it. Canned corn. I mean, not canned corn. Excuse me. Corned beef. Cottage cheese, a lot of your cheeses, sauerkraut, vinegar, pickles and olives and Worcestershire sauce and soy sauce and all of your cheeses. Okay, so yeah, these are just some products. Now, the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle. This is found in the matrix. Okay, so again, the matrix is kind of like the cytoplasm, and it's aerobic. That means it needs oxygen to perform. Now, the electron transport chain, this happens in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. To work. ATP. Now, so glycolysis happens in pretty much all organisms, okay? But it actually started or evolved from our ancient prokaryotics, okay? Because that was when they were here on planet Earth before oxygen was actually in our atmosphere. Now, again, let's go back to the endosymbiotic or symbiosis theory, okay? So it states that mitochondria of eukaryotic at one point are actually independent species of Now, mitochondria are not like any other organelle, okay? Because, okay, so unlike other organisms, mitochondria also have, like we said, has their own DNA that we actually see in our modern day bacteria, okay? Because it's, now, let's do a little checkpoint. What are the 3 stages of cellular respiration? Glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport. Now, where does each occur? Let's talk about photosynthesis first. Okay, so photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. Respiration occurs in the mighty mitochondria. What are the products? Okay, so photosynthesis produces 1 C6H12O6 plus 6H2O, and respiration produces 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus 36 ATP. What are the reactants? Now, photosynthesis, they need water, they need CO2, they need the sunlight. Now, for cellular respiration, we need oxygen and we need food, right? We need that glucose. Now, what are the steps of photosynthesis? The light dependent and the light independent, or the Calvin cycle. What are the equation? Okay, so if you can remember photosynthesis, you know cellular respiration because it is backwards. And you take out 36 ATP and you insert the sun. So let's do photosynthesis. 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O plus the sun gives you C6H12O6 plus 6 molecules of O2. So again, flip it around, take the sun, and put 36 ATP. Now, let's go do a self-test. Okay, in order to produce energy, cells start with glycolysis. Oxygen is not present. Where does it go next? Fermentation. If oxygen is present after this process, where does it go? Krebs cycle. A process that does not need oxygen is the anaerobic. Where does the Krebs cycle occur? In the mighty mitochondria, or the matrix, actually, specifically. What gas is a waste product? Oxygen. Where does glycolysis occur? Chloroplast.